Hello gentlemen, you may have noticed a Patreon link at the bottom of my videos. I'm now on Patreon as people have asked me quite often how they might support my videos. So if you want to consider becoming a patron, then you can follow this link, and I am grateful to every single patron, and the money will be used to keep on improving and making high quality videos. Before you watch this video, I'll be grateful if you can like, share and subscribe. Thank you very much. In my discussion with the White Knight BBC presenter Joylin Jenkins, he brought up an issue that has been thrown at MGTOW many times, and that's the issue of negativity. The meme follows a line that we are just bitter, that the MGTOW message is not a solution to gender issues, and we will never become mainstream because we're just so negative. A big part of the reason that blue pill men find it so hard to accept the realities of gynocentrism and male disposability is the irrational obsession with the emotion of hope. Hope allows us as a collective to disregard what we see right in front of us. It allows us to ignore millions of years of evolution. It allows us to forget the survival pressures faced by prehistory and modern humans. Hope is one of the many reasons that many men find MGTOW thought streams and head right back to the plantation. The hope that although half of the people he knows are divorced, that although every man he happens to know that is quote-unquote happily married is in fact miserable, the hope that things will work out for him, just him. Consider this for a second. This Joylin Jenkins likely knows on a personal level many men who are divorced, barely making ends meet, paying alimony to an ex-wife who despises him, and child support to children he wasn't too sure he actually wanted in the first place, but had them to make the wife happy. He likely has among his close friends men who are on the surface happily married, but after a couple of drinks in the bar are in fact miserable wrecks who are in states of perpetual ill health due to an inability to get off the treadmill and make time for leisure. And still, Joylin Jenkins questions the validity of a message that attempts to point out these realities to men, while also shaming the men who refuse to proudly don the yoke of slavery. The MGTOW message is certainly not negative. It simply refuses to indulge in the wasteful, irrational, and destructive emotion of hope in the face of contrarian evidence. And that's why I propose that on some level that MGTOW becomes what I like to call value-free. Certainly not as a knee-jerk response to the naysayers who describe the message as one of bitterness, but because of the mental clarity we achieve by refusing to overindulge in transient emotions when discussing topics of genuine magnitude, such as male disposability, male mother need, the male worker drone, gynocentrism, misandry, and Brifoot's law. You see, MGTOW get it, that it's not about good or bad, wrong or right. We seek to simply explain the human condition without taint of bias or prejudgment, to tell other men likely consequences of specific behavior based on known observations. For example, I will tell my fellow man that if he marries, he will likely enjoy a shorter lifespan, poor quality of health, less time to engage in hobbies, as well as the fact that his wife will render him less financially well off for the remainder of his life. And that's if the marriage succeeds. If the marriage does not succeed, he will have all of the above in addition to losing access to his children and face jail time should he find himself unable to meet the court-mandated child support payments. Should he decide to still get married, well, that's entirely up to him. In my opinion, the group within society that the average man has to fear the most is actually not the SJW. Yes, absolutely, SJWs in their many forms can and actually are using the legal system to create a nightmare straitjacket for the average man. They are literally destroying lives through rape shield laws and other monstrosities. But it's important to note that it's the modern-day traditionalist in his or her many forms, whether it's the alt-right, white nationalist, black nationalist, religious right, the secular traditionalist, the anti-feminist, the back-to-the-land movement types. These alt-right types are attempting to have men ignore the very evidence in front of their eyes and not follow their instincts that scream at men to run hard and never look back. You did actually just hear that correctly, by the way. Anti-feminists are for the most part traditionalists. The average anti-feminist is just mad that in the past, in payment for his wage slavery, he would have probably been rewarded with a nubile virgin, and now the best he can hope for is to shack up with a post-war single mother after her party years, paying full price for used-up goods that his betters have had for free when it was, still fresh off the shelf. Traditionalists have gone from benign friends of MGTOW to malignant real quick when it became very, very clear that MGTOW-minded men would not accept their feeble explanations of just blame the state, or blame no-fault divorce, or blame Fabian socialism. And now the trend is for them to act in the role of modern-day slave catchers, browbeating, cajoling, and herding back the men who become skeptical right back onto the plantation. Angelo John Gage, in his video, which has now been removed from out, was literally red with rage when describing how men who refused to violently confront immigrants in Cologne as a group for the alleged sexual assaults that took place, when some men in his comment section, who actually I should point out were probably not even cognizant of MGTOW thought stream, suggested that these women ought to be held to standards of adult behavior and act in their own self-interest and self-defense by perhaps avoiding such parts of the city they deemed too dangerous for their well-being. Angelo and his fellow white nationalists went into a meltdown and demanded male protection for random females, suggesting that this was both a duty for men and helped men fulfill some age-old contract with the women whereby we owe them our bodies and well-being so they might feel safe showing flesh in miniskirts and wearing makeup. I'm just going to reiterate that just to let that sink in. You as a man, according to the traditionalist white nationalists, should put your life on the line so a woman can engage in the vanity of wearing, a miniskirt and layers of makeup. What these men haven't quite figured out is that women are neither traditionalist nor modern, nor any other label. Women do not have loyalty. They are opportunistic, wanting to be modern and sassy when it suits them, usually when they're young, and then traditionalist when it benefits them, usually when they're older. Men are the ones who hold romantic views of the past, and we need to shed them if we are to be free of chains of days gone by. And the question that we might ask is, why do traditionalists demand so often in their videos, sermons, and articles that men die for women, that men sacrifice their well-being and take on familial responsibilities, that men provide for women? Because it's a tacit acknowledgement of the fact that deep down they know that they, the traditionalists, have nothing else to offer. If they don't sacrifice, they see themselves as worthless, and women pick up on that to the point that these men only have value in the eyes of a woman after she's had a couple of children with the bad boy types that these traditionalists, just seem to despise. And then at this point, when she's in desperate need of a man to help raise these children and rescue her, then the traditionalist gets to step in and play the role of savior. And that's why the new mantra of the traditionalist is to get men to ignore their deepest biological drivers and invest resources in other men's children and post-war women, bending over backwards to explain all of the females' past behaviors, removing all agency from the woman when it suits them, and ascribing all and every form of blame to the men she freely chose to associate with in her past. In the eyes of the traditionalists, all problems lead back to men, and that's why the new kind of post-millennial message of the television evangelists such as Matt Driscoll is, don't overlook single mothers. To the traditionalists, there is a serious problem with men having the unrealistic and even unmanly expectation that their bride won't come with another man's children. So what I actually want to do is look at some of the more frequent complaints made by these types and perhaps offer a more rational rebuttal. So the first one is, he chose to knock her up. No, she chose to sleep with him. Secondly, he ran off when she got pregnant. No, he made it clear he didn't want kids and she didn't take her birth control. Or he couldn't provide for her. No, he realized that wasn't his role and he was destined for better things and did the smart thing and picked up and left. Well, or he wasn't a responsible father. No, he wised up that he didn't want any part in wage slavery in return for occasional sex and told her to go fuck herself. Or feminism has tricked women into not needing men. No, men and women never actually really liked each other very much outside of the sexual act on the part of men and provisioning on the part of women. Now both sexes are simply acting more in line with their basic motives, i.e. men trying to hook up with as many women as possible, and women using the state to steal anything they can lay their hands on, either in family court or through the welfare system. And the next one is a classic traditionalist line: women aren't women any longer. No, women have always been like this. That is vain, self-interested, and mercenary. You just didn't have social media detailing their shortcomings on a daily basis. So, sorry for getting off tangent here. You see, gentlemen, these traditionalists hold women up as special and deserving of special treatment, and simultaneously demand that men maintain a default position as unpaid bodyguard to a woman he has no relation to. And I'm going to be playing you now a couple of short clips, and one is of a traditionalist Christian conservative who poses the insane question as to why men faced no legal sanction for refusing to die on behalf of women during the Costa Concordia disaster, and another is by a black nationalist literally describing women as God, deities.
At the topic, trying to really go into the Bible to prove to the, not to them brothers, but the people that's there.
What's the topic?
That the black woman is God.
Well, they will have to be reduced to an inferior state of mind and thinking in order for them to even comply with that which is being conveyed to them. So, and this is no offense to them. This is my disposition. You will have to be reduced to your adolescent mind in order for you to receive those type of texts. Okay, and believe that it's authenticated. Okay, and to believe that there's no conspiracy entangled or engendered around it. Because people will say this to me: a female dog gives birth. Does that make the dog God? And I'm like, they think they're saying something intelligent, and they're really being immature. And you know what that mind is? The religious state of mind. Only a child would do that. But I will tell you, the females, they don't get the point. The females of the human species, I render that of God based on dictionary definition, and one of which being Merriam-Webster's dictionary definition would be: a God is one who is in a specific aspect of creation. Does this hold the man null and void? No. But at this particular moment in time, I am homing in on the female. Can the man play the role as God? Yes. God is a neuter noun. It applies to both male and female, first and foremost. So sometimes people say, how can you call her God? Then who's the goddess if she's God? God is a neuter noun. I have to say this to clear some things up, because what you just opened up is Pandora's box just from asking that one question. That's why I was just being humble. So when they say, is the female God? Or how come the man can't be God? The man is God as well. But in her capacity, she is God for different reasons. You understand what I'm saying? And
I mean, let's get real. Everybody wants to be in with the girls, don't they? Because they are the progenitor of life. They are the magic creatures. They are the heart of the civilization. They have twice the DNA a man has. So a guy saying he's a girl, sorry, you don't have mitochondrial DNA. Don't have it. You're not even the full species. Women are. But you won't hear one word from the fake feminist about this, because they tell women they love them because they want to control them and keep them on that reservation real close to them so they can destroy you. The truth is, women, out of their mitochondrial DNA, they now have proven this, will release new genetics, which are actually old genetics, for key times, and will decide the sex at the embryonic level and what to activate in the male that's going to be created, that comes out of the woman, out of the earth, out of God's creation. How magic is that to defend women? Men are a weapon of women. Men are here to serve women. Men are here to die and build for women. Men are nothing but the entire defense mechanism of, not just in mammals, but in all major species. And there are some roles in some species where the women act as defenders as well. The point is, the idea that men and women are in competition is a sick joke. And the fact that men treat women bad and don't know how to get women's affection shows how stunted and destroyed they are, because there weren't men in the house to show them how a man acts and to show them what women want. It's pathetic.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, as many of you have heard, there was a shipwreck involving the Costa Concordia, and as of today, January the 17th, there's still 29 people assumed to be missing or possibly deceased. You know, I had a chance to go out on YouTube and watch some of the videos on this crash. It's indeed devastating. But what was more disturbing to me is the live videos that I saw from the life craft leaving the main ship. In those videos, you can hear men and women talking very cavalier, and there seems to be a pretty wide mixture of men and women inside these life craft. So today I wanted to talk about chivalry, and I'm going to use some excerpts from the Bible as well as stories from the Titanic. But I'm going to start with Friday the 13th because, as many people know, this ship ran aground. Actually, I was on Friday the 13th. And, you know, for a long time, we've always associated Friday the 13th with bad luck, but we've never really known why. So, first of all, let's cover chivalrous. The definition by Webster's is having the qualities of chivalry as courage, courtesy, and loyalty, considerate and courteous to women, gallant, gracious and honorable towards an enemy, especially a defeated one, and towards the weak and the poor. So now that we've covered chivalry and Friday the 13th, let's go on here to a little bit of scripture. 1 Peter 3:7 NIV reads, "Husbands, in the same way be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers." Ephesians then says, "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleanse her with the washing with the water through the word, and to present her to himself as radiant as the church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself." And lastly, a commentary on the scripture. First of all, husbands are to love and serve their wives as Christ served the church. Paul discusses the authority, headship, leadership of the man. Leadership must be servant leadership. Paul draws out the fact that Christ served his church and gave himself up for her. The husbands must lead his wife this way. He must lead her to the point of giving himself up for her, even to the point of death. So, you know, there seems to be a lot of focus on the captain of the ship because we all operate under the assumption that the captain had all authority on that ship. A poll done today by U.S. citizens indicated that 94% of U.S. citizens feel that the captain of the ship must be held accountable and punished for his actions. If God has given man all authority, if you go back to Genesis, where is the punishment for the men not being chivalrous?
Traditionalists seem to have one burning desire, and that is to codify into law their group's preferred set of obligations, which I might add are based on biological drivers. And what I mean by this is simple. Firstly, because women are the limiting factor in reproduction, of course, and men are more disposable as a result, so they want to make it a legal obligation that men have to be chivalrous to women in times of disaster. They want men essentially jailed for taking lifeboats. And the second example is because men are more driven and ambitious due to the fact that we have to compete with other men for female access, they're quite happy to campaign against any and all form of alimony reform, including the Florida alimony reform of 2016, where we see that the feminist and traditionalist groups, such as the League of Women's Voters, abandon all facade of being on opposite sides of the fence and actually come together to ensure that in an age where women can work, women still have the option of sitting on their asses, for life on the back of some helpless guy. They literally wish for human propensities to form a legal straitjacket offering benefits to a woman at a man's expense. What they want is a legal duty to rescue type situation for women in all facets of life, whether it's the fact that she has illegitimate children and wants a new sucker provider, or has decided to wear a short skirt in the wrong fucking neighborhood, where even the police dare not go, you as a man in their eyes has a duty to protect. And of course, it's usually based on racial lines. You see, the fact that women are not meekly submitting to the traditionalist yoke has confused and infuriated the traditionalists. The more PC among them ascribe this development to the fact that women have changed, and others ascribe it to a dark conspiracy. Many within the kind of white nationalist movement, such as Royce, Black Pigment Speaks, Angelo John Gage, Arini, and Roosh, they lament the low reproductive rates of white females, and being the white knights that they are, they can't place responsibility for not wanting to reproduce on the shoulders of the gender who are the gatekeepers of sex, i.e. women. So let's just explore that for a second. Are we dealing with a conspiracy here? Or are there exogenous causes to the low birth rates? Is cultural Marxism or welfare the reason for the noticeable drop in marriage rates, birth rates, and the breakup of the family unit? Let's look at demographic transition, and that is the process by which a country moves from high birth and high death rates to low birth and low death rates with population growth in the interim. And the kind of classic description of the demographic transition is based on observations from the West, of course. So if cultural Marxism is at the root of demographic transition and the unwillingness of women to reproduce within the kind of traditionalist wage slave protector provider model, then we ought not to see demographic transition in countries untouched by feminism. And in 2008, the Global Health Education Consortium put out a report titled Demographic Transition and Its Causes, What Reduces Fertility. So on screen, you're seeing a number of graphs from the report. First, there is a demographic transition following death rate, followed by a decline in the birth rate. Apparently, the transition in the developed countries took about 100 years and is attributed to improvements in socioeconomic conditions which changed child survival rates and fertility preferences. And this second chart on screen plots the time taken for fertility to decline from 6.0 to 3.5. And please notice something very, very interesting here, that while it took the USA nearly 60 years to go from 6.0 to a 3.5 birth rate, Iran achieved this in half a decade, just 5 years. Why? Also, why did Indonesia and Iran, both Muslim countries, achieve this even quicker than the West without the influence of feminism? Because as the authors point out, and I'm just going to read directly here, the time it takes for a country to go through the demographic transition, in this example from TFR of 6 to a TFR of 3.5, varies and greatly reflects the ease with which women can obtain the means to limit the size of their families. You see, it's all about things such as safe, effective reproduction, which is, of course, a byproduct of technological advancement. Even within cultures where marriage rates remain stubbornly high, the birth rates have dropped dramatically. And Stefan Molyneux, a YouTuber I'm sure most of you are familiar with, made a recent video which I feel actually warrants a far more detailed response, and I may actually get round to that. But for now, I'm just going to play you this short clip.
Is human nature fixed, specifically female nature, in terms of hypergamy? And will the only way to make any meaningful change in the men's rights movement is to implement an Islamic-style patriarchy, making women the lawful property of men? The reason why I ask this is why I believe that all women are hypergamous, in terms of always looking for the next guy with more resources, and that I believe that this nature is fixed. I believe that in order for any meaningful change to happen in the men's rights movement, regardless of what that change might be, that change will have to be done using force, since women are the majority of the voting population, and I simply don't see women voluntarily voting for a system that limits their influence on politics and the society at large. That's from Andrew.
Hello, Andrew. How you doing?
Hello, Mr. Molyneux. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. So, what?
Making women the lawful property of men? I got to tell you, you're going to have a bit of a hill to climb, my friend.
Oh, I know. Well, because I've been listening.
I mean, do you mean? I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you mean that, or are you kind of just being provocative?
Well, a little bit of both, I guess. I'm not sure if I would agree with that actually happening, but with like the men's rights movement, I see them like trying to make things like more equal in terms of the law and how men are viewed and how men are kind of like disposable. And I don't see the men's rights movement succeeding in any way, simply because like women are like I said, they're the majority of the voting population. So I don't ever see them like voting for something like that, especially with feminism gone wild as it has been.
Oh, it's not going to happen through voting, man. No, the change is going to happen. The relations between the genders are going to normalize when the government runs out of money, not because women or men, for that matter, wake up and start voting in terms of long-term common sense and productivity.
Yeah. Well,
But so, I mean, this idea that I guess the question is what happens after the government runs out of money,
that's
right?
actually what I was just going to ask you. So what would happen then if the government were to run out of money?
I guess what I find most incredible about this is that this caller's an MRA. An MRA. Here is a man who is supposedly helping men to achieve legal change so they can do exactly what? Return to a patriarchy? Return to chivalry deaths on the battlefield? Giving up seats on a lifeboat? Are the MRA trying to force legal change so that women need them again? Knowing he can't compete with her employer, he wants the government to essentially force her to need him again. This man is certainly not representative of all MRA. However, I reject the idea that MRAs are somehow natural allies of MGTOW. So of course, I will take each and every MRA on his or her merits and then decide, but they certainly don't get a blanket welcome. This man does not want freedom. He wants women to need men. He wants to reduce their dependence on the state so that they are chained to him and his provisioning ability. He even went as far as advocating for legal change that would make women the property of men. He wants a government-allocated wife and will attack you as a MGTOW if you want no part in this sad and pathetic dream. He is upset that women are hypergamous and wants the government to help him get laid, just like in the good old days. And then he also postulates what happens when the government runs out of money, how this will impact gender relations. I mean, talk about ignoring the bigger issue of riots, starvation, murder, death, and anarchy that will likely result from a global or even national governmental breakdown. But as long as a traditionalist can keep on getting his blowjobs from his servile, obsequious wife, then all civilization can collapse for as long as he cares. You see, the welfare state, for better or for worse, is now a part of the human condition in the West. If it collapses, so does the West, so does civilization. Unfortunately, this caller and Stefan mirror a lot of the thinking within MGTOW about the efficacy of a return to a patriarchy for solving male issues such as misandry. He blames the welfare state for both the reduction in marriage rates and the breakdown of the family. Things which at first glance seem legitimate, but when we look at the evidence, we find very, very weak causative links. Also, what about the birth rate in countries that don't have a welfare state, like Indonesia or Nigeria, or certainly don't have welfare states on the level we see in the West? Okay, in getting back to Stefan's video, we have two solutions proposed. The first is suggested by the caller, and that is to what extent can an Islamic-style patriarchy solve men's issues? And the second line of thought is advocated by Stefan, stating, as he usually does, that the end of the welfare state for women will cause a return to the golden era favored by these traditionalists, which I guess is the 1950s, where every man will have a wife who makes him meals and brings him, slippers after a long day's work. Remember that under traditionalism, let's be honest here, women have rights, men have responsibilities. So let's briefly explore the validity of these two solutions. And firstly, to get a realistic view of what life is actually like under an Islamic-style patriarchy, Al Monitor is a site with a tagline, The Pulse of the Middle East. In April 2015, they published an article titled, Why Are Young Iranians Losing Interest in Marriage? And the article goes on to say that despite Iranians' leaders' desire to increase the marriage rates and population, the latest statistics published by the National Organization for Civil Registration and the Ministry of Youth and Sports indicate that men and women have less interest in getting married while the divorce rate has risen. Ali Akbar Muzon, chairman of the Information and Statistics Department of the National Organization for Civil Registration, said in an interview on the 6th of May with the Mer News Agency that the marriage rates have declined in the last 3.5 years. So this is very, very recent, down 1.9% in 2012, 5% in 2013, 6% in 2014, and 7.2% in the first 5 months of 2015. I mean, that's one hell of a trend. A University of Tehran sociology professor who spoke on the condition of anonymity told Al Monitor that the reduced interest in marriage stems in part from the living condition of Iranian youths born in the 1980s and 1990s. Economic and cultural middle classes of the society have experienced astronomical growth in technology and freedom in social relations. Therefore, the youth have more opportunities to engage in romantic and sexual relationships while they're single, and they're not willing to lose these opportunities by committing themselves to marriage, said Mahmoud Gurazi, who is the head deputy for youth affairs at the Ministry of Youth and Sports. And he said, and I'm just going to quote, "We should improve society's attitude towards marriage. We should perform this task using all our cultural tools, such as films and books and press, the media, and even music. Unfortunately, we don't have proper books and cultural products in this field." Another article follows this trend. In Reuters on the 22nd of October 2014, an article titled "Rise in Divorce in Iran, Linked to a Shift in the Status of Women." And the article reads, "Weddings in Iran have long been an over-the-top affair, with families spending thousands of dollars to celebrate a union. But now some couples are splurging on an entirely different sort of nuptial celebration, a divorce party." Local media outlets and blogs have been abuzz for months about lavish parties, complete with sarcastic invitations and humorous cakes for couples splitting up. The phenomenon has apparently become so widespread in Tehran and other large cities that one prominent cleric said that couples who threw these parties are satanic. Still, the divorce parties are a sign of an undeniable trend. Divorce in Iran is soaring. Since 2006, the rate of divorce has increased more than 1.5 times, to the point that around 20% of marriages now end in divorce. In the first 2 months of this Iranian calendar year, more than 21,000 divorce cases were lodged, according to official statistics. The rise in the number of couples choosing to split has angered conservatives in Iran, who see the increase in divorce as an affront to the values of the Islamic Republic. Last month, Mustafa Pul Mohammadi, the current justice minister, who's also a cleric, of course, said that having 14 million divorce cases within the judiciary is not benefiting of an Islamic system. Now, just before we continue here, so we see a theocracy, an Islamic patriarchy, in fact, one of the few true patriarchies left on earth. We also see a society that is, for all intents and purposes, untouched by capital F feminism, the social movement, that is. But we see a mirroring of the Western situation, that is, decreased marriage rates, increased divorce rates, to the extent that the government is now stepping in with desperate solutions, which I believe will ultimately fail. Once mechanization starts in earnest, once women are able to earn their own income, once the economy develops a robust, service sector, where there is little need, for physical size, in a job, marriage is dead on its feet. In Iran, at the time of writing the article, the country had 14 million active divorce cases within the judiciary. And keep in mind that the population is only 78 million. That's 17% of the population are in court for divorce. Now, this issue of decreasing marriage rates and rising divorce is not limited to Iran. In other, Islamic-style patriarchies, let's, for example, take Saudi Arabia. Within the website alarabi.co.uk, they ran a story in October 2015 where they lamented the rise of divorce in the kingdom. And the article reads, "The figures may be shocking, but they are official. Coming from the Saudi Ministry of Justice, the number of divorce cases registered in the first 6 months of 2015 was 33,954, where there were only 11,817 marriages." So let that sink in. 8.4 divorces per hour against 2.9 marriages in an Islamic-style patriarchy. The article then went on to say that Sheikh Mohammed Othman Falaj Baba, an Islamic marriage officer and family counselor, he told Al-Arabi Al-Jaid that divorce is driven by other causes. Most youths want to keep their freedom even after marriage, as though nothing has changed in their lives, he said. Many women reveal the most intimate secrets of their married lives to their mothers, which in many cases has caused mothers to press their daughters to divorce at the first sign of trouble, rather than encourage them to be patient like mothers did in the past. Now, the second issue here addressed by Stefan is the accusation that the welfare state has destroyed the family by making marriage less of an attractive option for women. Now, that is a very, very bold claim, and it's very consistent with the line parroted by a lot of libertarians, but is it a claim backed up by facts? Again, we do have some facts for it, and I will be exploring this more fully in a follow-up video. But, what about countries that don't have a welfare state, i.e. most countries outside of the Western world, such as China, for example, Nigeria, Indonesia, who are experiencing decreasing marriage rates and exploding divorce rates in their major cities, all without welfare. And another thing that these traditionalists like to do is accuse MGTOW of complaining. Now, all we do is bitch, apparently. Notice that they never claim that we're lying. Notice that they never say men are making up the fact that homeless shelters are not open to men, that men don't make up the majority of suicides, that men are not being divorce rates, that men are not facing longer sentences for the same crime. No, they just say stop talking about it. And it's a common meme. And it's the idea that it's okay to live in hell, but it's not okay to talk about it. And actually, it's this meme that annoys me the most in the kind of traditionalist thought stream, or at least the internet version of the traditionalist thought stream that I come across on a daily basis. So I'm allowed to suffer, but I'm not allowed to describe my suffering. And as Stardust put it in the comments section of his video, The Red Pill Then and Now, the traditionalists seem to have a policy of appeasement with women and feminists. No matter how bad things get for men, they'll never actually tell men to go their own way and do their own thing. These traditionalists will spend hours sermonizing on how bad feminism has become, but never a minute to give men the sound advice to live for his own well-being. These traditionalists are, for all intents and purposes, the Neville Chamberlains of the men's movement. With that kind of staunch belief in appeasement, while the enemies of free men rally around them, passing laws, changing social convention, and euthanizing the male spirit. And my message to traditionalists is simple. If you wish to die, serve and provide for women in return for sex and a place in the social hierarchy, if that's your thing, please go for it, do so. But stay the fuck out of MGTOW. And that goes to all of the traditionalists, or whatever you're bent, whether you're an anti-feminist, whether you're a white nationalist, whether you're a black nationalist, whether it's the alt-right. Hey, do your thing. But MGTOW is certainly no place for you. And just on another note, I wanted to address a long overdue issue, and that is the BBC discussion with Joylin Jenkins, the white knight that he is. Well, he's at it again. And this time he was on another BBC radio show to defend his sham of a discussion and broadcast where he cut most of the bits out. And really, it wasn't even biased. This was just full-on prejudgment. And when members of the UK public took to task, a lot of people actually apparently wrote in and called in to complain, and also query why was he so biased, and try to ensure that his audience, prejudged the MGTOW message. And what I'm going to do, just before I go into that, I'm going to play you a clip where he and another guy in the BBC on another show on BBC Radio 4, they played Barbarossa's video and parts of the discussion with myself and other MGTOW.
Hello, I'm Roger Bolton, and this is the latest Feedback podcast. It's an unusual one this week. For a start, Desert Island Discs and the sainted Kirsty Young come in for criticism. I can hardly believe it. Mind you, they did get involved with a radioactive subject, nuclear power. Then there's a debate about whether some views are too extreme to be broadcast, particularly when they are promoted by men who think women rule our society and want to go their own way. And why? Now, Radio 4's Out of the Ordinary series does what it says on the tin, and one extraordinary recent edition, The Red Pill, dealt with what appears to be a growing phenomenon, the MGTOWs, men going their own way. They believe that men are oppressed by women and must therefore cut themselves off from them in order to lead satisfying and successful lives. Here's what some of you thought of the programme.
Penelope Overton. Most shows about ignorant and bigoted supremacists make you cry with despair. This one is laugh out loud.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Holroyd from London. I just wanted to give you some feedback on the excellent Red Pill programme that was on last Wednesday. It was both humorous and compelling programme, so I just wanted to say well done for that.
Joe Higgins. The Red Pill. A pretty fascinating programme on an anti-feminist movement. Keep an open mind or you may become infuriated.
But not everyone was impressed.
Hi, I'm Nick from Benchill in Wythenshawe. Regarding the programme Out of the Ordinary, The Red Pill, it seemed to me to be very much below the standard for the BBC, and it was more like a YouTube rant. The whole thing was clearly biased against its subjects and their beliefs.
Pretty much all women will find the ideas in this programme offensive or ludicrous, and quite a lot of men will too. And let me make it clear that they're not my ideas.
By the end of the programme, the audience had been so reinforced in the idea that its subjects were sad losers with no girlfriends and ideas based purely on bitterness at their own failures, that any thoughts put forward by them seemed daft.
One odd thing when talking to Red Pill men is the way they swing from serious public policy issues to personal grievance to generalised whinges about women.
It's too late. It's all gone quite seriously anti-male, and the only real strategic approach is to save yourself.
Women aren't worth the hassle. The juice is not worth the squeeze.
They'd like you to think they've arrived at their politics through the exercise of pure reason, but at the root there's usually some private personal hurt.
I, as a young man, had been involved with a girl I cared an awful lot about, and the relationship ended catastrophically.
Why was such an attack made on men who, if the programme was to be believed, are a small group of almost completely isolated, powerless fantasists?
I was joined earlier by Jolyon Jenkins, presenter and producer of Out of the Ordinary, and asked him first whether he really did approach the subject objectively.
Well, I think I'm wanting to understand their world, and I think when you deal with these people, what you have to do is be honest with them and make it clear that it isn't your perspective, but you have to listen and get inside their heads and then probe it and question it. I'm not sure what objective means in this context. I think it's about
I would have thought
being kind of honest with them.
Well, objective, starting as you would with any other group, shall we say.
Well, I think you have to listen to what they say, reflect it, and then probe it. And I think there was an awful lot of quite heavy probing towards the end. I mean, I don't think I gave them a particularly easy time, but I think the point is to be fair with them, and I hope I was.
Do you find it difficult to remain impartial when covering the sort of ideas that you obviously don't agree with?
I think it's a bit tricky. I think you have to make it clear to them that you don't necessarily agree with them without at the same time jumping down their throats every time they say something that you find objectionable. Otherwise you'll get nowhere. If you look at the comments I got, I mean, I think that mostly, I'd say about 80% of them were positive, but from people who disagreed with these men. So you can distinguish between whether you like what they're saying and whether you think it's a good programme.
I'm David Clark from Hungerford. Why was this programme made? It was pointless. Blokes with Issues would be a better title.
Jolyon Jenkins, why did you think Men Going Their Own Way was worth investigating?
I suppose the place I start from, is this interesting? Is this something people don't know about? And are they people who have got a sort of self-contained belief system? I mean, the title of the series is Out of the Ordinary, and I think what I try to do is look for people who start with a fairly ordinary sort of belief, but then just sort of take it too far. They sort of overthink it, they talk amongst themselves, they come up with a theory, in this case a very kind of worked out theory, And then they end up with a sort of worldview that's almost impervious to outside influence, where they can't actually see that you could seriously disagree with them. And also, they feel that their voice, their point of view, is entirely rational but excluded from the mainstream media. So I always think those sort of people are quite interesting. I suppose almost as a kind of anthropology, I suppose, is what I'm doing. But I mean, in the end, it's just, is it interesting? And I think people on the whole did find it interesting.
But isn't there a danger if you focus on such people that you give them publicity? I noticed, for example, on your Twitter account, this from Rod. Thanks for giving us airtime. It's all very amusing to me. You have helped our cause. Do you think you have by giving them publicity?
Possibly. I mean, they don't expect to get a sympathetic hearing, but I think they feel that any hearing at this stage is worth it for them. But to some extent, there's an element of bravado in what he's saying, because quite a lot of the other people were very much against the programme.
How significant is it in this country?
I don't know. It's very hard to know at the start of something. At the moment, I'd say it isn't particularly big, but it reflects something which is probably quite big, which is a kind of sense of insecurity amongst a lot of men about the changing role of men, particularly young men who are not very well qualified, not very well educated. Their insecurity about their role. It's hard to tell. I mean, often these things are small at the beginning, but you can't necessarily wait until they're big before you talk about them.
And you see, Joyland's sole concern seems to be, like the traditionalist that he is that most women will find the ideas offensive. He's not concerned with the merits of our observation or the evidence that backs up, the body of MGTOW work. It's purely down to the emotional response of his master, the human female, and that's at the root of traditionalism. The hate of anything that fails to uphold the female primacy, be it male disengagement from the marriage contract or male reluctance to die on command for women. This is an attack on their most cherished institution, which is male suffering for female gain. You see, they don't like the marriage contract because it's somehow sacred. They like it because in the marriage contract, men suffer, for the benefit of women. And on a side note, when you observe the behavior of Reggie, Yates during and after the first BBC video program, the filming where the BBC attempted to smear MGTOW as an extreme group, well, what did we see? Reggie Yates responded to Roosh that he was getting married when Roosh queried Reggie as to whether he used his fame and notoriety to sleep with multiple women. And it seems that after doing a bit of research on the MGTOW phenomenon, he had a change of heart. And although publicly what we were saying, was dismissed out of hand, by he and his camera crew, then within short order of broadcasting the program, he terminated his engagement to his fiancée, Tia Ward. That's right, the guy's actually called off his marriage. Although Reggie is still a media shill and a BBC stooge, he isn't stupid. He knows that statistically, based on what he likely found within MGTOW forums, of course, that his wife will cheat on him, that she will gain weight, that she will stop working, that she will divorce him and take upwards of 50% of his assets. And although he lacked the courage to warn other men by naming MGTOW, as the reason for his newfound courage and reluctance to marriage, I don't believe it's a coincidence that he called off his engagement soon after coming into contact with MGTOW, thought stream. And for Reggie and many other men like him, it's a case of do as I say, not do as I do. Thank you very, very much. This is CS MGTOW, and again, I would like to encourage you to like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you're not already doing so. And I have a lot more content planned. Again, I have put a Patreon link there. If you would consider becoming a patron, I'll be super grateful. And part 2 of my video on economic systems, trade-offs and gynocentrism is nearly complete. I actually already had it finished, but then I came across a lot more data. I wanted to look at the available data from a slightly different point of view. So I've expanded the video. It's a little bit longer this time, but hopefully it's going to be a long, good video as opposed to just me just kind of meandering off topic. So that video was supposed to be out already, but I really want to put some finishing touches to it. So please do bear with me. And I hope that I can just, make it a very, very good video. Thank you very, very much for your patience. And thank you for watching the content. Again, like, share, subscribe. This is CS MGTOW.
How long has it been since you've gone at top speed in a powerboat with two blondes in bikinis? Well, that's too long. Hi, I'm Jeremy Robar with some important information about masculinity and you. In today's times, with women working in the office and men wearing pastels, pinks, and eyeshadow, it's vital you reaffirm your masculinity at every opportunity. Are you wasting away in an office, going bald, and entertaining yourself by dropping pencils so your fat secretary bends over? You could be in the money, living an adventure. Take on the hottest, most prestigious profession of today, international trade. It's a man's occupation, it's a career, and it's an opportunity, all at once. All you need to do is lease one of our high-speed boats. No money down, no credit check, and you'll be hauling glamorous international cargo in no time. And you don't have to go very far, only about 6 miles offshore, to collect our special cargo and bring it back. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3, all at high speed, like a man. Hey, if you love the ocean, partying, and genuine capitalism, the import-export business is for you. If you're ready to step into the future of masculinity, come see me, Jeremy Robarb, at Robart's Import-Export in Viceport.
Bruno, you used to be a wrecking machine. Nobody could do more push-ups than you.
Push-Up, a movie about one man's battle with gravity.
I don't respect you, Dad. You're not strong anymore. That's why I let the tennis coach take Mom.
And he's got only one way to win back the respect of his son.
Welcome to the 15th annual Worldwide Push-Up Contest held in Tokyo, China.
For the first time in my life, I'm gonna cry! I'll never beat that big Russian!
Yeah, I push up for the collective.
An individual against a collective system of oppression.
25, 26,
action,
105, 106.
Adventure.
312. 313.
Suspense.
Are you tired now, American?
Commie! Bricks!
Plus a story that will touch your heart.
I'm here to help you, Timmy. You're not my mom. You're just begging him for Coke money.
Fuck off, you little brat. In 5 years, you'll be a freebasing wreck.
It's Bruno's greatest challenge to save his honor, his son, and his manhood. See Push-Up the movie, an American tradition.
Hey kids, why spend Saturday watching boring cartoons about fighting aliens when you can help fight real illegal aliens? Head to some real-life Saturday safety fun at Ammunition with Derek the Dodo.
Yay!
Hi kids, I'm Derek the Dodo. Today, I'm going to teach you all about gun safety. Doesn't that sound fun?
Yay!
Guns can be very dangerous, especially to little people who don't like hole shot in them, or to birds on deserted islands who thought the nice sailors only wanted to be friends. But that's another story.
Derek will teach the kids what to do if they find a gun around the house.
What do we do first?
We pick it up.
Second?
Check is loaded.
Right. Because we don't want any nasty accidents. So look down the barrel and...
pull the trigger!
Yep, it's loaded, Henry. And you made a mess. Next, carefully file off the serial number and conceal it quickly about your person.
Ammunition and Derek the Dodo have been proudly bringing gun safety to your community for over 30 years. Ammunition, protecting your kids' rights.
Ammunition!